I promise to pay when I grow up. The downtown Chicago convenience store, usually a symphony of beeping scanners and rustling plastic bags, fell into an abrupt hush. The security camera's low hum seemed to amplify the silence. A man in a tailored overcoat, his temples showing the first frost of middle age, turned from the refrigerated drinks. The words had cut through the noise in his head. Quarterly reports, market volatility, 1,000 data points, like a tiny bell ringing in a cavern. Elias Vance, once dubbed the Ghost of LaSalle Street by the financial press for his almost phantom-like ability to command a private equity empire while remaining completely out of the public eye, found himself looking at a child. She couldn't have been more than 8, her small frame straining to hold a baby wrapped in a thin, faded towel. The girl's name was Lily. Her hair was a tangle of untamed puffs, her hands were grimy, and her small coat was no match for the brutal December wind whipping off Lake Michigan. The baby in her arms let out a weak, hungry whimper. The cashier, a young man with tired eyes, spotted them, and his face hardened. "Hey, this isn't a shelter. You gotta leave." Lily flinched, a movement so small it was almost imperceptible. She clutched the baby tighter, and her shoulders began to tremble, not from the cold, but from the familiar sting of public humiliation. She started to turn away. Elias stepped forward, his voice quiet but carrying an undeniable weight. "She isn't stealing anything." The girl asked a question. The cashier looked up, his expression shifting from annoyance to shock. "Mr. Vance? Sir, look at her, she can't be in here." "I'll be the judge of that," Elias said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Other customers had started to notice. A woman flipping through a magazine whispered to her friend, "That's the little girl who sleeps under the lower Wacker Drive overpass." Another man chimed in, "I heard her father's in prison. The mom's not right in the head. Poor kid." Elias crouched down to Lily's level. She was frozen by the baby formula aisle, staring at the floor. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lily," she mumbled without looking up. "And the baby?" "My brother, Leo. He's 1." Elias's voice softened. "You walked all the way here in this cold?" Lily nodded. "We ran out of formula yesterday. Leo won't stop crying. I had to wait till Mama fell asleep to sneak out. She screams sometimes. I didn't want her to see me go." Elias glanced up at the cashier, who was now awkwardly rearranging a display of gum. "Do you have a warmer coat?" he asked Lily. She shook her head. "I gave Leo the blanket. It's the warmest thing we have." Elias stood up slowly. The analytical mind that navigated billion-dollar acquisitions was now grappling with a far more complex equation. What do you do when you are confronted by a child who possesses more raw courage than any CEO you have ever met? "We're buying more than just formula," he said, his voice firm. "Stay with me." He walked through the aisles, picking out a gallon of milk, several cans of infant formula, bread, baby wipes, and hearty canned soups. He added a box of diapers and a pack of thick thermal socks to the basket, ignoring the curious and pitying glances from the other shoppers. At the counter, Lily could barely reach the top. She placed a can of formula on the conveyor belt with 2 small, trembling hands, as if it were a sacred offering. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. "But I really, really will pay you back when I'm big. I promise." Elias met her gaze and nodded solemnly. "I don't doubt you for a second, Lily." When they stepped outside, the wind howled, a physical blow that made Lily gasp. Her tears froze on her lashes. "Where are you staying?" he asked. She hesitated, her eyes darting nervously down the street. "It's okay," he said gently. "I won't tell anyone." She looked up at him, a flicker of trust in her exhausted eyes. "Under the overpass, on Lower Wacker, there's a dry spot by a big heating pipe." A woman walking past gasped, then hurried on, her face a mask of shame and discomfort. "Do you want me to walk you back?" he asked. She shrugged, a small, weary gesture. "People yell at us when they see us. But you can come. Just don't be too loud. Mama gets scared of loud noises." As they walked the few blocks, the city's glittering skyline feeling like a world away, Elias felt the unfamiliar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Not the kind you could delegate to an associate, but the visceral, human kind that would haunt you if you walked away. "Are you cold?" he asked. Her chattering teeth were answer enough. Leo whimpered again, a thin, desperate sound. Without a second thought, Elias shrugged off his expensive wool overcoat and wrapped it around her small, shivering body. She looked up at him, shocked, but burrowed into its warmth. They walked in silence as the roar of traffic on the upper level grew louder, the air thick with the smell of damp concrete and exhaust. Behind a barricade of rusted shopping carts and a sheet of blue plastic, a woman was curled on a pile of sodden blankets. She stirred as they approached, then shot upright, her eyes wide and full of a familiar, hunted fear. "Mama," Lily called softly. "It's me. A man helped us get food." Her mother's voice was slurred, her words tangled. You weren't supposed to leave." Elias kept a respectful distance. He didn't approach. The woman, whose name he would learn was Clara, seemed to relax slightly at the sight of Leo, reaching for him with trembling hands. "She was only trying to get some help," Elias said quietly. Clara didn't respond. Lily handed the baby to her mother, then turned to Elias. "You can go now. We'll be okay. We just needed the formula." But Elias didn't move. Instead, he said, "Lily, I want to come back tomorrow morning. Would that be all right?" She tilted her head, a question in her eyes. "Why?" He hesitated, then found a clarity he hadn't felt in years. "Because someone should." That night, sleep was a stranger to Elias. Miles away, under the rumbling artery of the city, a little girl was probably humming a baby to sleep, wrapped in a billionaire's coat. And in the silent, sprawling expanse of his penthouse overlooking a frozen Lake Michigan, a man was beginning to understand that the most valuable asset he could possibly possess was to be needed. The brutal Chicago morning air was a physical shock as Elias Vance stepped out of his black sedan. He wasn't dressed for LaSalle Street today. Faded jeans, a simple gray sweatshirt, and a heavy parka. He could have been anyone. But the sharp, analytical eyes that dissected market trends were now searching for something far more fragile. Lower Walker Drive was unchanged. The city's detritus swirled in the gutters, and the constant roar of traffic overhead felt like the growl of a great, indifferent beast. Elias's gaze fixed on the corner Lily had shown him, a space between concrete pillars. His heart, an organ he usually ignored, hammered with an unfamiliar anxiety. He was afraid. Not of the place, but of what he might find. Or fail to find. He saw the blue plastic tarp, the shopping cart piled with clothes. And there, curled on a flattened cardboard bed, was Lily. Leo was nestled against her, a tiny life seeking warmth. Her eyes were closed, but his heavy footsteps echoed, and she stirred instantly. She sat up, alert as a startled fawn, her body tensing until she saw his face. "You came back," she said, her voice a rough whisper. "I said I would." She pulled Leo closer, his small hand still clutching the sleeve of the wool coat Elias had given her. "He didn't cry as much last night," she whispered. "The milk helped." Elias opened a backpack and pulled out a thermos. "It's hot chocolate," he said. "Not too sweet." Her eyes, old and young at the same time, widened with a startling joy. She took a sip and let out a long, slow sigh. "Tastes like a birthday." He managed a small smile. "That was the idea?" A rustle from behind the tarp made Elias turn. Clara emerged slowly, her hair matted, her face etched with a deep, weary suspicion. "You again?" she said, her voice hoarse. "I brought them breakfast," Elias replied. Clara's eyes flickered from his face to the bag in his hand. "You one of them city people? Social services?" "No," he said simply. "Just me." "What's in the bag?" "Egg sandwiches. And 2 more blankets." Clara snorted, a dry, bitter sound. "Rich guys always think blankets can fix everything." "They can't," Elias agreed. "But they help." He set the bag down near the wall, giving her space. Clara reached inside, pulled out a sandwich, sniffed it suspiciously, and then handed it to Lily. "You need to stop coming here," she said, her voice hard as she bit into her own sandwich. "People like you don't belong in a place like this." "Neither do you," Elias said, the words quiet but firm. She froze mid-chew, her eyes locking onto his. They were tired, sharp, and full of a pain that defied pity. "You don't know a damn thing about where I belong." "I don't," he admitted. "But I want to." Clara scoffed. "Why?" Elias looked at Lily, at Leo, and then back at Clara. "Because your daughter trusted me, and because when I left here last night it felt wrong." She shook her head, a cynical gesture. "You feel guilty. You'll bring food for a couple days, talk a good game, and then you'll be gone. They always go." "I'm not them." "You're exactly them. Fancy car, soot hands, eyes that look at you like you're a problem to be solved." "Mama," Lily interrupted, breaking the tension. "He talked to me, like I was a real person, not like the people who just hand out socks at the shelters and don't look at you." Clara's hard expression wavered. She finally sat down, wrapping a threadbare blanket around her shoulders. "You got kids?" she asked. "No," he said. "My wife died 10 years ago. We didn't have any children." "You lonely?" He gave a single, honest nod. "Sometimes." A long silence settled between them, punctuated only by the rumble of the city overhead. "You still want to help?" Clara finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes." "Then don't bring us sandwiches. Bring us a way out." Elias's breath caught in his throat. It was the real request, the one that cost more than money. It cost commitment. "I don't want a handout," Clara continued, her pride a fierce, wounded thing. "I want a chance. I want to wash my hair in a real shower. I want to sleep behind a locked door." "I understand," he said. "No," she whispered. "You don't, but maybe you're trying. And that's something." Elias glanced around at their grim surroundings. But amidst the damp concrete and despair, he saw it. A child who still believed in the power of a promise, and a woman whose fire had not yet been extinguished. He stood, brushing dust from his knees. "There's a motel 4 blocks from here. I can get you a room, just for a week to start. A warm bed, a hot shower, a door that locks." She eyed him, searching for the catch. "What do you want in return?" "Nothing. You don't even have to say thank you. Just give Lily and Leo 1 night with clean sheets." She didn't answer for a long time. Then, so quietly, He almost missed it. She said, "Okay." As they packed their few meager belongings, Elias made a quick call to his assistant, booking the room and arranging for a discreet delivery of essentials. Walking to the motel, Lily slipped her small, cold hand into his and held it the entire way. Before they went inside, she tugged on his sleeve. "Mr. Vance?" "Yeah?" "You didn't have to come back," she said. "But I'm really glad you did." He squeezed her hand. "So am I, Lily." As they pushed through the glass doors into the heated lobby, away from the biting wind, Elias understood something profound and terrifying. This was not going to be temporary. When kindness is a foreign language, is it any surprise that the first impulse is to run? What does it take to unlearn a lifetime of mistrust? He was about to find out. The motel room was humble. The beige walls were scuffed. The air smelled faintly of bleach and old carpets, and the heater rattled like it was on its last breath. To Lily, however, it was a palace. She stood in the center of the room, still holding Leo, and turned in a slow circle, her eyes wide with awe, as if afraid it might dissolve around her. "It's so warm," she whispered. Elias leaned in the doorway. "That's the heater. It's seen better days, but it gets the job done." Clara dropped their single plastic bag of belongings onto the dresser. Her face was a mask of suspicion and exhaustion. She looked utterly out of place, like a wild bird brought inside, unsure if the cage door was truly open or just another kind of trap. Elias placed a duffel bag on the small table. "I had some things delivered. Shampoo, toothbrushes, fresh towels, diapers for Leo." Clara nodded stiffly, offering no thanks. He hadn't expected any. Trust was not a currency he could buy. Lily gently placed Leo on the queen-sized bed, carefully tucking the thick comforter around his small body. He cooed, closing his eyes, the simple comfort of warmth already working its magic. "I'll check on you tomorrow morning," Elias said from the doorway. "You'll have your privacy here. I told the front desk not to bother you." Clara finally spoke. "You do this a lot? Pick up strays?" "No," he said. "This is a first for me." She studied his face. "You don't look like the type to get sentimental." "I'm not." "Then why?" He paused, searching for the truest answer. "Because I can. And because I realized I should have done something like this a very long time ago." A flicker of understanding, not sympathy, but recognition, crossed her face. Before he could leave, Lily ran over and pressed a small, crumpled napkin into his hand. "I drew you a picture," she said shyly. He unfolded it. It was a pencil sketch, faint and uncertain, of a tall man holding hands with a little girl and a baby. Above them, she had scribbled a single word: home. He felt his throat tighten. "You're quite the artist, Lily." She beamed. "I like to draw when I get sad. It makes it better." He didn't know what to say to that. He carefully folded the napkin and put it in his pocket. "Well, keep drawing," he said softly. As he reached for the doorknob, Clara's voice stopped him. "Don't get attached," she warned. "To what?" "To us. You might be a good man, but this life, it's a shipwreck. You can't fix it." "I'm not trying to fix anyone," he said. "I'm just trying to offer a lifeline." She didn't reply. That night, Elias returned to his penthouse. The automated lights illuminated the sterile beauty of his life. Italian marble, polished steel, floor-to-ceiling windows displaying the glittering, indifferent Chicago skyline. He poured a glass of single malt scotch he didn't drink. He sat on his $1,000 sofa and took out Lily's drawing. The fragile paper felt warm in his hand. 3 miles away, a little girl who promised to pay for a can of formula was sleeping between clean sheets, and for the first time in a decade, Elias Vance did not feel so alone. Morning brought a cold, driving rain. By 8 a.m., Elias was on his way back to the motel, carrying a bag of fresh pastries and a new, brightly colored coat for Lily. But when he reached room 109, the door was ajar. The bed was neatly made, the donated toiletries sat untouched on the counter, and the extra blankets were folded with military precision. They were gone. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He searched the room, the bathroom, the closet. Nothing. He rushed to the front desk. "The family in 109, did you see them leave?" The clerk, a teenager snapping his gum, shrugged. "Yeah, lady came down real early. Said she couldn't stay. Dropped the key and just walked out. Didn't say where she was going." Elias stepped back out into the downpour, his heart pounding. He drove the surrounding streets, scanning the sidewalks, the bus stops, the alleyways. They had vanished as completely as ghosts. Lily hadn't wanted to go. When Clara had woken her before dawn, her voice a sharp, urgent whisper, Lily had protested. "But Mama, it's warm. Mr. Vance said he was coming back." "That's why we have to leave, Lily," Clara had hissed, her eyes wild with a familiar fear. "Kindness like that always has a price. They give you a hand up just so they can own you when you fall." Lily had obeyed, not understanding, but knowing from years of experience that arguing was futile. They had slipped out a side door, back into the cold anonymity of the city. Elias spent the rest of the day searching. He stopped at shelters, at soup kitchens, at a small park where his company had sponsored a charity drive years ago. No one had seen them. That evening, defeated, he returned to the overpass on Lower Wacker. The space was empty, rain-swept. Their makeshift camp had been cleared away, leaving nothing but damp concrete and shadows. He sat on the curb, the rain soaking his jeans, and watched the headlights of passing cars paint fleeting streaks on the wet pavement. He had known she might run, but he hadn't expected it to feel like such a profound loss. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the napkin drawing. The pencil lines had blurred slightly in the damp air, but the image remained. A tall man, a little girl, a baby, and the word home. He wasn't sure how long he sat there, an hour, 2. But when he finally stood up, he made a promise to the empty street. "Wherever you are, Lily," he whispered, "I'm not done looking." The next morning, Elias ignored the frantic calls from his office. A multi-million-dollar merger was on the line, but he let the calls go to voicemail. The markets could wait. He was thinking about a little girl who drew pictures of home and a mother who saw danger in every act of kindness. Lily's drawing now had a permanent place in his wallet, folded carefully next to his ID. Anna, Elia, Sarah became Lily, Leo, Clara. He was still calling the baby Elia sometimes. It should be Leo. "I will correct this going forward." "No, it's Elijah in the original. Leo is my new name." "Okay, Lily, Leo, Clara." Elias drove through the city, a man searching for a whisper. He checked under the Lower Wacker overpass again. Nothing. The rain had erased any trace they had ever been there. By lunchtime, he had been to 3 shelters. At the St. Jude Community Center on the west side, a brick building with a faded mural of hopeful faces, he finally got a lead. "Yeah, I saw a woman with a baby yesterday," a tired-looking woman at the intake desk recalled. "And a little girl with big, sad eyes. She kept her hood up." Elias leaned in. "With a woman? Early 30s, dark hair, seemed anxious." The woman nodded. "That's her, Jumpy. Didn't want to sign in, said she couldn't trust the system. Took a handful of diapers and left in a hurry." "Did she say where she was going?" "No, sorry, but I think I heard the little girl, Lily maybe, ask if there were food banks near Pilsen." Pilsen. It was a thread, a fragile one, but it was something. By late afternoon, Elias was slowly driving through the vibrant, mural-adorned streets of the neighborhood, peering into alleys and scanning the faces at bus stops. He went into a small bodega and bought a bottle of water just so he could ask the cashier if she'd seen them. No one had. He was turning to leave when he saw a corkboard cluttered with flyers. Tucked at the bottom was a small, handwritten note on pink paper. Found. Child's blue jacket with yellow stars, size small. Found on corner of 18th and Ashland. Call if it's yours. He snapped a photo of the number and dialed. A woman answered. "Hello? Yes, I'm calling about the jacket you found. I think I might know the child it belongs to." There was a pause. "You know the little girl? Her name is Lily. She's 8. She has a baby brother named Leo, and her mother is Clara." The woman's voice warmed. "Oh, bless them. I saw them 2 nights ago. They were huddled outside the laundromat on the corner. The little girl must have dropped it when they left." "Do you know where they went?" "I think I saw them heading toward Douglas Park. That's all I know. I'm sorry." "Thank you," Elias said, his breath catching. "Are they all right?" "I hope so," she said softly. "Lord, I hope so." He drove straight to Douglas Park. The winter sun was low in the sky, casting long, skeletal shadows from the bare trees. Pigeons huddled for warmth. Elias walked the perimeter of the park, his eyes scanning every bench, every nook, until he heard a sound. Not crying, but a quiet, rhythmic humming. A lullaby, almost lost in the wind. He followed the sound to the far side of the park, behind a low, thick hedge. He saw a small shape hunched over, rocking back and forth. "Lily?" he called out gently. She went completely still. He stepped closer. "It's me, Mr. Vance." She turned, her eyes enormous in her small, pale face. Leo stirred in her lap, blinking against the fading light. "Mr. Vance," she breathed, her voice a fragile wisp of sound. "You found us." She looked thinner, more tired than ever, but she managed a weak smile. "I told Mama you would find us," she said, but she got scared again. She said nice things don't last. "Where is she, Lily?" Elias asked, crouching beside them. "She went to find medicine for Leo's cough. She told me to wait right here for her. That was this morning." Elias's gut clenched. "How long have you been by yourself?" She shrugged. "A while." The temperature was dropping fast. "Come on," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "You and Leo aren't spending the night here." "But Mama." "We'll leave a note for her. But you two need to be warm. And safe. Your mother would want that." She hesitated, then looked down at her sleeping brother. "Okay," she whispered. Elias carefully lifted Leo into his arms, cradling the small, warm body against his chest as if he'd been doing it his whole life. Lily walked beside him, her small hand once again finding the sleeve of his coat and holding on tight. This time, he didn't take them to a motel. He took them home. The private elevator opened directly into Elias's penthouse, with a nearly silent whoosh. Lily stepped out onto the polished marble floor, her head tilted back, her eyes wide as she took in the soaring ceilings and the panoramic view of the glittering, frozen city. Leo whimpered in Elias's arms. "Is this a hotel?" Lily asked, her voice full of awe. "No," Elias said softly. "This is where I live. And for now, it's where you'll live too." She stared at the minimalist kitchen, the vast leather sofa, the single, stark, black and white photograph on the wall, a portrait of a smiling woman with kind eyes. Elias's late wife. "Do you have a bedroom for us?" she asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I have 3, he replied. "You get to pick the one with the biggest window." Her voice was barely audible. "I've never had my own bed before." Elias felt something shift inside him, a protective instinct so fierce it startled him. He laid Leo down on the sofa, covering him with a cashmere throw. "Well," he said, his voice gentle, "it's about time you did. We'll figure everything out, Lily. You, me, and your mom. But tonight, it starts with this. Tonight, you are safe." Lily nodded, and for the first time since he'd met her, she let her guard down completely and began to cry, not out of fear, but with the quiet, shuddering sobs of profound relief. Outside, the city roared on, but inside the glass walls of the penthouse, a door had finally opened, letting in a fragile, stubborn hope. What happens when profound poverty walks through the door of extreme wealth? Is it charity, or is it a collision that forces both sides to reckon with the world they thought they knew? Elias didn't sleep. He sat in a sleek leather armchair by the window, the city lights spread out below him like a fallen constellation. The quiet hum of the building's climate control system was the only sound, save for the soft, even breathing coming from the guest suite where Lily and Leo were finally sleeping in warmth and safety. But Clara was still out there somewhere in the cold, vast city. He couldn't shake the image of her haunted eyes, her pride a brittle shield against a world that had offered her nothing but hardship. He knew she had intended to return to the park for her children, but something had gone wrong. By 3 a.m., Debus, with police reports showing no hospital intakes or arrests matching her description, he made a call. Michael Chen, a retired CPD detective who now ran a high-end private investigation firm, answered on the second ring. "Mike, it's Elias." "Vance, it's the middle of the night. Is someone dead?" "Not yet, but I'm worried they might be if we don't move fast." Elias explained the situation. A homeless woman named Clara, 30s, fragile mental state, last seen near Douglas Park. "And this woman is important to you?" Mike asked, his voice laced with curiosity. "She's important to a little girl who's currently asleep in my guest room." Mike let out a low whistle. "All right, Elias. I'll get my people on it at first light." "Thanks, Mike. Send me the bill." "Will do." Elias finally dozed off as the first pale hints of dawn touched the sky. He woke a few hours later to an unfamiliar smell, burnt toast, and the sound of soft humming. He found Lily standing on a stool in his state-of-the-art kitchen, intently watching slices of bread in the toaster as if it were a high-stakes experiment. She turned as he entered. "Good morning, Mr. Vance." "Morning, Lily," he said, still groggy. "You didn't have to do that. Mama says when someone lets you stay in their house, you help out so they don't change their mind." Elias smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Well, consider this burnt toast your rent payment." They sat at the huge kitchen island, Elias with his imported coffee, Lily with a glass of orange juice, and Leo in a high-tech bouncing seat Elias had had delivered before sunrise. He asked her about school, about her favorite things, about drawing. She answered hesitantly at first, then with a growing confidence. But when he gently asked about Clara, her small shoulders tensed. "She always comes back," she said, her voice quiet but certain. "Do you know where she might have gone yesterday, Lily?" She looked down at her juice. She said she was going to the pharmacy on Ogden Avenue, but sometimes she gets lost. Lost? Lily's voice dropped lower. Her head gets buzzy, she calls it. The noise gets too loud inside and she can't think, so she just runs. The quiet resignation in her voice was heartbreaking. Last time she was gone for 3 days. When she came back, she had scrapes on her hands, said she'd been fighting with shadows. He reached across the island and gently covered her small hand with his. "I've asked a friend to help me look for her. A very good man. We're going to find her, Lily." Her eyes were wide and serious. "You promise?" "I promise." Later that morning, Mike called. "Elias, we might have a hit. Woman matching Clara's description was spotted early this morning trying to get into a closed health clinic on Maxwell Street. Said she needed baby Tylenol. Barefoot, disoriented. Did anyone call 911? Yeah, a street vendor did. But by the time paramedics arrived, she was gone." Elias paced his living room, a tight knot of anxiety in his chest. Where would she go from there? Mike was quiet for a moment. If she's in a state and avoiding official help, she's looking for a place she feels safe, or at least a place that's familiar. Back alleys, underpasses, anywhere she's been before. Elias stopped pacing. Check the alley behind the old St. Adalbert's Church in Pilsen. Lily mentioned it once, said they used to go there on Sundays because the choir music calmed her mom down. On it, Mike said. An hour later, the phone rang again. We found her, Elias. His body went rigid. Is she all right? Physically, yes. Mentally, she's fragile. She was huddled against the church wall, crying. Wouldn't talk to my guys. Where is she now? We managed to convince her to come to a private clinic my wife volunteers at. My wife's a trauma counselor. She got Clara calmed down. She's resting. I'm on my way. The clinic was small and discreet, nestled between a bakery and a law office. Inside, Elias found Clara curled on a vinyl couch, wrapped in a thick blanket. She looked up when he entered, her eyes vacant at first, then widening with a jolt of recognition. Lily, she whispered, her voice cracking. Where's my Lily? She's safe. They're both safe. At my home. Clara's body slumped with relief, but it was immediately followed by a wave of panic. I didn't mean to. I was trying to find medicine. His cough, and the noise in my head. I know, Elias said softly, sitting on the chair across from her. You don't have to explain. You were being a mother. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't think you'd still be looking. I made a promise to Lily. Clara stared down at her hands, raw and chapped. Why are you doing this for us? What do you want? Elias sat forward. I want you to get better. I want you to be the mother your children deserve. I want to see you all safe. I want help, she sobbed. But I'm so scared. What if I mess it all up again? You probably will, he said, and her head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. We all mess up. That's part of being human. It doesn't mean you don't deserve another chance. A broken, watery laugh escaped her lips. You're not what I thought you were. He smiled. Neither are you. After a long silence, he stood up. Come home, Clara. She stared at him. To your place? For now. Until we figure out the next step. You have a daughter who's waiting for you, and a son who finally slept through the night. She hesitated, her fear and her hope wrestling for control. Finally, With a shuddering breath, she nodded. The private elevator slid open, and Clara stepped into Elias's penthouse for the first time. She moved like a sleepwalker, her eyes taking in the strange, sterile beauty of a world she had only ever seen from the outside. "Mama!" Lily's joyous cry echoed from the living room as she sprinted across the polished floor. Clara dropped to her knees just as Lily crashed into her, and they clung to each other. A tiny island of fierce love in the vast, quiet space. "I was so scared, Mama," Lily cried into her shoulder. "I know, baby. I'm here now," Clara murmured, stroking her daughter's hair. "My head got loud, but I'm here now." Elias stood back by the kitchen, giving them their moment. He felt like an intruder, yet knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. When Leo started fussing from his playpen, Clara gently untangled herself from Lily and rushed to him, scooping him into her arms with a practiced ease. She held him to her chest, burying her face in his soft hair, anchoring herself to the solid, warm weight of him. "I forgot how heavy you are," she whispered, a sad smile touching her lips. "That means he's been eating." "Twice a day," Elias said from the doorway. "And sometimes a third time, if Lily is persuasive enough." Lily grinned. "I told him Leo likes applesauce." Clara finally looked around the penthouse again, but this time she was seeing it differently. It wasn't just a rich man's apartment, it was the place that had kept her children safe. Elias had set out a simple lunch on the massive dining table. Tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. He'd burnt the first batch. The second was passable. "It's not much," he said, "but it's hot." Lily's eyes lit up. "We never sit at a real table," Clara said softly. A statement of fact, not a plea for pity. They ate in a comfortable silence, a temporary family forged in crisis. Partway through the meal, Clara looked at him. "This isn't permanent," she stated, her pride still a sharp, protective instinct. "I don't want to be a charity case." Elias nodded. "It's temporary. It's a bridge to get you to the other side. I've already had my foundation start researching transitional housing programs, safe places with therapy, childcare, and job training." Her expression softened. That would be good." After lunch, Lily convinced Elias to help her build a fort out of sofa cushions and expensive throw blankets. Elias surrendered a few of his silk-lined throws without a second thought. From inside the fort, Lily and Leo's happy squeals filled the apartment. Clara watched them from an armchair, a tentative smile on her face. Elias brought her a mug of tea. "I'd forgotten what a quiet house sounds like," she murmured. Elias sat across from her. "Quiet can be good." She took a sip of tea and looked at him. Really looked at him. "You lost someone," she said. It wasn't a question. He didn't look away. "My wife, Amelia, 10 years ago. Cancer." "I'm sorry." "I kept the apartment exactly as it was when she was alive. Same furniture, same art on the walls. I guess I thought if nothing changed, it wouldn't feel like she was really gone." Clara nodded slowly. "I know that kind of silence," she whispered. "When you miss their laugh so much you can't stand the quiet." They sat in that shared understanding for a long time. Then she asked the question that had been hovering in the air between them. "Why us, Elias? You could have given Lily some money and walked away. No one would have blamed you." He thought for a moment before answering. "Because for years, the world has told me that money is the answer to everything, that it can fix any problem. And it can't. But showing up, listening, making a sandwich for a hungry kid, maybe that's what really matters. Maybe I needed to be reminded of that just as much as you needed the help." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't look away. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Trusting someone. You don't have to know, he said. You just have to take one step at a time. That night, after dinner, Lily drew another picture, this time with a full set of colored pencils Elias had had delivered. It was a picture of a sleek, modern building with 4 stick figures standing in the window. A man, a woman, a little girl, and a baby. Above them, in shaky block letters, she had written one word: trying. She handed it to him before bed. This one is better. He held it like a precious artifact. Yes, it is. After tucking her children into their warm, safe beds, Clara stood in the hallway and watched Elias tidy up the living room. I want to be the mother they think I am, she said quietly. The one who is brave. You already are, he said. I still don't know if I can trust this, she admitted. Or you. I don't expect you to, he said, but I'll keep showing up until you do. She gave him a small, fleeting nod and disappeared into the guest room. Elias was alone again in the vast living room, but the silence no longer felt empty. It was filled with the lingering echoes of laughter, the scent of soup, and the faint rustle of a child turning over in a warm bed. This wasn't just about giving them a home anymore. Maybe, just maybe, it was about finding his own. The morning sun cast a golden path across the hardwood floors of the penthouse. Elias awoke not to the familiar, sterile silence, but to the smell of frying bacon and the sound of someone humming off-key. He found Clara at his industrial-grade stove, wearing one of his old university sweatshirts, her hair pulled back. Lily sat at the counter, meticulously feeding Leo small spoonfuls of yogurt. Morning, Elias said, his voice thick with sleep. Clara turned, a genuine small smile on her lips. Morning. Thought we'd let you sleep in. You looked exhausted. They ate breakfast together, a quiet domesticity settling over them that felt both strange and perfectly natural. After the meal, Elias placed a file on the counter. I had my foundation vet some programs, he said. Transitional housing. The one in Lincoln Park is excellent. It offers counseling, job placement services, and high-quality childcare. Clara opened the file. These places, they cost a lot of money. I'll handle it, he said. At least for the first year, until you're on your feet. She put the folder down, her jaw tight. You can't just keep fixing everything for us, Elias. This isn't about fixing, he countered. It's about providing a foundation. Lily has already shown she's a fighter. You're a survivor. I'm just leveling the playing field for you. Clara looked away, swallowing against a knot of emotion. I don't want Lily growing up thinking some rich man is just going to magically appear and solve all her problems. She won't, Elias said firmly. Because she's seen you be the magic. She's seen you get up every single day in an impossible world and find a way to keep her and her brother alive. That's a strength money can't buy. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. Elias checked the intercom. It's Mike Chen, he said, a hint of surprise in his voice. He opened the door to the retired detective, who nodded a greeting to Clara. Just wanted to follow up in person, Mike said. Make sure you're both settling in. Clara stiffened. Are you a cop? Used to be, Mike said, his voice gentle. Now I just help a friend who gets himself into complicated situations. He knelt down to look at Lily. Hey there, kiddo. You're a lot tougher than most of the rookies I trained. Lily beamed. Mike stood. Listen, Elias, he said, his tone shifting. My contacts downtown flagged something this morning. A street outreach worker reported a guy asking about a woman named Clara with 2 kids, a little girl and a baby. Clara went white. Oh God, no. Clara? Elias asked, his voice low. Her eyes were wide with a terror he hadn't seen since the first day. It's Marco, she whispered. Leo's father. I thought he was still in prison. He said he'd find me. He said I owed him. Owed him for what? Elias's voice was dark. For having his baby. For leaving him. He threatened to take Leo. Mike's expression hardened. If he's out and he's looking for you, we need to get a restraining order filed. Today. He won't care about a piece of paper, Clara said, her voice shaking. He doesn't care about rules. But the law does, Mike said firmly. Elias knelt in front of Lily. Did you hear us, sweetheart? It's okay if you're scared. Lily nodded, her small face serious. You're going to keep us safe, right? She asked, clutching his sleeve. Yes, Elias said, looking her directly in the eye. I promise. That afternoon, Mike personally escorted Clara to the courthouse to file the paperwork. Elias stayed at the penthouse with the children, trying to maintain an atmosphere of normalcy. He built a magnificent pillow fort and let Lily teach him the rules to a complicated card game she'd invented. But underneath the playfulness, his mind was racing. Safety wasn't just a warm bed and a full stomach. It was protection from the shadows of the past. And Clara's past had just shown up at their door. When she returned, she looked drained but resolute. It's done, she said. You did the right thing, Clara. That night, after the kids were asleep, they sat on the balcony, the glittering city spread out before them. I used to think being strong meant being invisible, Clara said quietly. Just keeping your head down and surviving. And what do you think now? Maybe real strength, she whispered, is letting someone see you when you feel broken. Protecting someone isn't just about money or physical force. It's about standing firm and declaring no more. But does that courage come naturally? Or is it born only when you finally have something truly precious to lose? Clara reached over and placed her hand on his. It wasn't a romantic gesture, but one of profound, shared humanity. You're not failing, Elias, she said. And for the first time, in the face of a gathering storm, he believed her. The rain started before dawn, a cold, gray drizzle that matched the mood inside the penthouse. Clara was up early, a cup of coffee clutched in her hands as she stared out at the turbulent lake. Elias found her there. Neither of them spoke of Marco, but his presence was a ghost in the room. Mike's contact at the courthouse called, Elias said, breaking the silence. The restraining order goes into effect this morning. Clara nodded. A piece of paper. It's more than that, he said. It's legal ground. It means if he shows up, we have the law on our side. A man like Marco, she said, her voice flat, thinks he is the law. Elias came and stood beside her. If he comes near you, Clara, he'll find out he's wrong. A small, wry smile touched her lips. You talk like a man who's never been punched in the face. He chuckled softly. Does a hostile corporate takeover count? A real laugh escaped her, light and surprising. It felt like a small crack of sun through the storm clouds. Later that morning, Clara and Lily went to a pre-arranged appointment at a family counseling center. Elias stayed with Leo, who was fussy and teething. He tried to work, answering emails and reviewing portfolios, but his focus was shot. Every few minutes he would check the security monitor for the building's lobby, his gut churning with a protective instinct that was becoming second nature. Just before noon, the intercom buzzed. Mr. Vance? It was the front desk. There's a gentleman down here asking for Clara. Says he's her husband. Should we send him up? Elias felt the blood drain from his face. "Hold him there," he said, his voice cold and steady. "Do not let him leave the lobby. I'm on my way down." He grabbed his coat, his mind a blur of contingency plans. When the private elevator doors opened into the lobby, he saw him. Marco was leaning against the far wall, a smirk on his face, his eyes casing the opulent lobby like a wolf in a sheep pen. He was lean, coiled, and radiated a dangerous energy. Elias walked directly toward him. "You're trespassing." Marco looked him up and down. "You must be the rich boyfriend." "I'm the man who's telling you to leave. I just want to talk to my family." "You don't have one here." Elias saw the two lobby security guards moving closer, sensing the escalating tension. "Look, I'm not here for a fight," Marco said, holding up his hands in a gesture of false peace. "I just want what's mine." "They are not your property," Elias said, his voice dropping to a low growl. "And if you take one more step toward that elevator, I will ensure you leave this building in handcuffs." Marco's eyes narrowed. "You think your money makes you tough?" "No," Elias said coolly. "It makes me a problem you can't afford to have. And I have more than enough resources to make sure you never bother them again." For a long moment, Marco just stared, weighing his options. Then he let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "So you're playing the hero now, huh? Saving the poor, broken little family." "I'm not playing anything," Elias said. "I'm standing between a predator and the people I care about. You need to leave. Now." Marco held his gaze for another charged second, then shrugged, a gesture of casual defiance. He turned and strolled toward the glass doors. "Tell her this ain't over," he called back over his shoulder. Elias watched him disappear down the street before turning to the head of security. "Log his description. Archive the camera footage. If he sets foot on this property again, you call the police immediately, no questions asked." He had barely returned to the penthouse when the elevator chimed and Clara and Lily stepped out, their faces rosy from the cold. Clara saw his expression and froze. "What is it?" "He was here," Elias said quietly. "Downstairs." Clara's hand flew to her mouth. "Did Lily?" "She never saw him. You're both safe. He's gone." Clara sank onto the sofa, her legs trembling. "He always comes back, like a bad dream you can't wake up from." "He won't get near you again," Elias promised. "Not while I'm alive." She looked at him, her eyes a mix of terror, guilt, and a profound, aching gratitude. "You never signed up for any of this?" "I didn't have to," he said simply. "I chose to." Lily climbed into her mother's lap and showed her a small clay bird she'd made at the center. "Look, Mama, it's a bluebird. The lady said they're a sign of happiness." Clara hugged her daughter tightly. Elias looked at them, a fierce, protective love swelling in his chest. He'd navigated boardrooms, outmaneuvered corporate raiders, and built an empire from nothing. But he knew, with absolute certainty, that keeping this small, fragile family safe from the storm, was the most important deal he would ever close. The rain continued through the night, a soft, steady drumming against the penthouse windows. Inside, the silence was heavy, charged with the aftermath of Marco's visit. Elias made pasta for dinner, and Lily, in an attempt to lighten the mood, insisted on grating the cheese, showering the kitchen with more parmesan than made it onto the plates. Her laughter was a small, bright light in the gloom. Clara, however, was a ghost at the table, pushing noodles around her plate, her eyes distant. Elias saw the way she startled at every sound, the way her hand instinctively went to the phone beside her. Later, after the children were asleep, He found her standing by the window again, watching the traffic flow like ribbons of light on the wet streets below. "I feel like I can't breathe," she said without turning. "I keep seeing his face, hearing his voice. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." "He's not going to get to you," Elias said. "Security is on high alert. Mike's people are tracking his movements. We have a plan." She shook her head, a gesture of deep weariness. "Plans don't stop men like him. He thrives on fear." Elias stepped beside her. "Then we give him something else to focus on." She looked at him, her expression clouded with confusion. "Like what?" "Like realizing he has no power over you anymore." She gave a bitter laugh. "Look at me, Elias. I'm terrified." "You are," he agreed. "But you haven't run. You stood your ground. You came back from that courthouse with a piece of paper that says he can't hurt you. That's not weakness, Clara. That's the definition of courage." Her face softened, tears welling in her eyes. "Why do you believe in me so much?" He paused, searching for the words. "Because I see who you really are," he said softly. "Beyond the trauma, beyond the fear. I see the woman who walked through a blizzard to get milk for her baby. I see the mother who protected her daughter with nothing but her own body. I believe in you because your strength makes me want to be a better man." She finally turned to him, a shuddering breath escaping her lips. "I don't know what I would do without you." "You'll never have to find out." The next day, Elias arranged for Clara and Lily to meet with a trauma therapist who specialized in domestic violence cases. He knew that legal orders and physical protection were only part of the solution. True healing had to happen from the inside out. While they were at their session, he took Leo to Lincoln Park. Wrapped in a carrier against his chest, the baby stared with wide eyes at the squirrels and the winter bare trees. Elias sat on a park bench, watching families play, feeling like an observer from another planet. An older woman with kind eyes sat next to him. "You're first?" she asked, nodding at Leo. Elias smiled. "Something like that." "They change everything, don't they?" "Yeah," he said, bouncing Leo gently. "They really do." Later that evening, Mike called. "Got an update on Marco. He's been asking around the shelters downtown, trying to find out where you might have gone. Seems desperate for money." "Is he a direct threat?" "Not yet. But he's unpredictable. The best thing we can do is keep him on the radar and keep you all secure. He'll either get sloppy and get arrested for something else, or he'll give up and move on." "He's not the give-up type," Elias said grimly. That night, a small sense of normalcy returned. Clara was quieter after her therapy session, but seemed lighter. Anna taught them all how to make shadow puppets on the wall. After putting the children to bed, Clara found Elias in his study. "Thank you," she said, "for today. The therapist, it was hard, but it helped." "You're doing the work, Clara," he said. "I was thinking," she began hesitantly, "about what comes next, about a life where I'm not just hiding." He leaned back in his chair. "Maybe it's not a place. Maybe it's a choice. To stop being a victim of your story and start being the author of it." She looked at him, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Is that what you did?" He considered it. "I guess I am. We both are." She reached out and rested her hand on his. The simple touch was more intimate than anything they had shared. "You know," she said, her voice soft, "for the first time since I met you, I actually believe that might be possible." In a quiet penthouse high above the sleeping city, two people from different worlds found a common ground, not in charity or rescue, but in the shared, quiet, terrifying, and beautiful work of beginning again. The days that followed felt like a fragile truce. The restraining order kept Marco at a legal distance, and Mike's surveillance provided a thin blanket of security. Life in the penthouse settled into a new kind of normal. Elias discovered he was surprisingly adept at assembling complicated baby toys, and that Lily's laughter was the best antidote to a stressful day of market analysis. Clara began to blossom. She started an online course in bookkeeping. She cooked meals that filled the apartment with the scent of garlic and basil, bringing a warmth to the space it had never known. She was slowly, carefully, reclaiming herself. But the unspoken threat of Marco was a constant, low-level hum beneath the surface of their new life. Clara still checked the locks obsessively, and Elias found his own sleep disrupted by a hyper-vigilance he couldn't shake. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, the doorman buzzed. Elias was in his home office on a video conference. "Mr. Vance, there's a delivery for a Ms. Clara Walker." Elias felt a jolt of ice in his veins. "We didn't order a delivery." "It's just some flowers, sir. The man said they were an apology." "Do not let him up," Elias said, his voice hard. "I'm on my way down." He abruptly ended his conference call, grabbed his coat, and headed for the elevator. His mind was racing. It was him. When the elevator doors opened on the lobby, Elias saw him. Marco was standing by the concierge desk, holding a bouquet of cheap, wilted roses. He looked thinner, more strung out than before, but his eyes held the same predatory glint. "Marco," Elias said, his voice dangerously calm, "you violated a court order." Marco laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "Relax, Richie Rich. I just came to say I'm sorry." "Get out. I want to see my son." "That's not going to happen." Marco's smile vanished. "You think you can just buy my family? Erase me." He took a step forward. Elias stood his ground. The lobby guards moved in, flanking him. "This is your final warning," Elias said. "Or what?" Marco snarled. "You gonna hit me with your briefcase?" He lunged, not at Elias, but past him, toward the resident elevators. The guards intercepted him, but Marco was surprisingly strong, fueled by desperation. A frantic scuffle ensued. One of the guards went down. Marco broke free and jabbed the up button for the penthouse elevator. It was Elias who reacted. He tackled Marco from the side, a clumsy, desperate move, bringing them both crashing to the marble floor. Marco was wiry and quick, landing a solid punch to Elias's jaw that sent a burst of light and pain through his head. But Elias held on, his entire focus on keeping this man from getting to the elevator, from getting to Clara, and the children. The other guard recovered and subdued Marco just as the wail of sirens grew louder outside. Police swarmed the lobby. Marco was hauled to his feet, screaming obscenities, his eyes locked on Elias with a look of pure, murderous hatred. "This ain't over!" he shrieked as they dragged him out. Elias was helped to his feet, his lip bleeding, his head pounding. He had just gotten into a physical fight, a brawl in the lobby of his own building, something so far removed from his manicured life it felt surreal. He rode the elevator back up, his hands shaking. When he walked into the penthouse, Clara was standing there, phone in hand, her face ashen. Lily was behind her, peeking out, her eyes wide with fear. "It was him," Clara whispered. Elias nodded, touching his split lip. "He's gone. The police have him." Clara rushed forward, her hands hovering near his face. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he said. though his whole body ached. He didn't get past the lobby. You're safe. Lily ran to him and hugged his legs tightly. You were brave, she said, her voice muffled against his pants. He rested a hand on her head. So were you. You all were. Later that evening, after Mike had debriefed them, Marco was being held on multiple charges, including assault and violating the restraining order, the four of them huddled together on the sofa. They were shaken, but whole. Clara cleaned the cut on Elias's lip with a gentle touch. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. Yes, he said, looking at her, at the children. I did. In that moment, a quiet and profound shift occurred. What had started as an act of charity had become something deeper. A bond forged in crisis, a choice to protect, a commitment that went beyond circumstance. What is the breaking point that turns a protector into a fighter? And can violence, even in defense of others, ever truly lead to peace? They didn't have the answers, but as they sat together in the quiet aftermath, they knew they were no longer just individuals navigating a storm. They were a family. The house in Pasadena was bathed in the golden light of a late afternoon sun. It sat on a quiet street, a small sanctuary of peace with a sprawling oak tree in the front yard. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Clara felt her shoulders relax. The move from Chicago had been swift and decisive, orchestrated by Elias and Mike in the days following Marco's arrest. It was a clean break, a new state, a new life. Each morning, Elias would video call from his office in Chicago, checking in. He sent boxes of books for Lily, developmental toys for Leo, and for Clara, he sent links to online courses and job postings at local nonprofits. The days settled into a peaceful, if cautious, rhythm. Marco was awaiting trial, facing significant jail time. The physical threat was gone, but the echoes remained. Clara spent her time turning the small rental house into a home. She planted a vegetable garden in the backyard, a small patch of defiant life. Lily, enrolled in the local elementary school, blossomed. She made friends, joined the art club, and wrote long, imaginative stories in a spiral notebook. One evening, Clara found Lily sitting on the porch swing, deep in thought. "What are you thinking about, Bug?" she asked. "I'm writing a story," Lily said seriously. "It's about a girl who used to be invisible, but then a man with kind eyes saw her. And now, she's not invisible anymore." Clara's heart ached with a bittersweet mix of pride and sorrow. "You're the strongest person I know, Lilybug." "No," Lily said matter-of-factly. "You are, Mama." That night, Clara sat down and wrote an email to Elias. "It's strange, starting over. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, but the sky here is just quiet. Thank you doesn't feel like a big enough word. You didn't just give us a roof. You gave me back the belief that a roof was possible." He replied within minutes. "You built the home, Clara. I just provided some of the materials. How are the tomato plants?" Their correspondence was a lifeline, a thread connecting two very different worlds. And as the weeks turned into months, something new began to grow between them, something tentative and fragile, communicated in shared stories and quiet encouragement. Then, one day, Mike Chen called with news. "They offered Marco a plea deal," he said. 10 years, eligible for parole in 5. If he takes it, you won't have to testify." Clara's hand tightened on the phone. "Does he have to take it?" "It's his best option. But there's a condition. He's requesting to see you, just once, with his lawyer present." Elias, who had flown in for the weekend, watched her face. "You don't have to do it, Clara." "I know," she said, "but I think I need to." She had to look him in the eye one last time, not as his victim, but as the woman who had survived him. The meeting took place in a sterile room at the courthouse. Elias waited outside. Clara walked in alone, her back straight, her expression calm. Marco looked smaller in the prison-issued jumpsuit, the dangerous energy replaced by a hollow defeat. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry," he mumbled to the table, "for everything." Clara stood her ground. "Your sorry doesn't fix what you broke, Marco, but I need you to know something. You have no power over me anymore. You don't own my fear. You don't own my silence. That part of my life is over." He finally looked up, and in his eyes, she saw not remorse, but the dim, final flicker of a fire that had been extinguished. As they drove away from the courthouse, into a future that finally felt clear, Clara leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. She wasn't smiling, but a profound peace had settled over her. It was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming her own story. And she knew, for the first time without a shadow of a doubt, that she was free. Is justice served when a perpetrator is incarcerated? Or does true justice only arrive when the survivor reclaims their power and their peace? The Pasadena house felt different after the plea deal. It wasn't a safe house anymore. It was simply home. The quiet was no longer a cautious, held breath, but a peaceful, easy rhythm. Clara cooked dinner while humming along to the radio. Leo, now a toddler, chased after Lily in the backyard, their laughter spilling through the open kitchen window. Elias began flying out from Chicago almost every weekend. He'd arrive with a suitcase and a box of donuts, shedding his corporate armor at the door. He played dragons in the yard with Lily and taught Leo how to stack blocks. He fixed the fence, helped Clara with her bookkeeping homework, and sat with her on the porch in the evenings, just talking. He was slowly, seamlessly, becoming part of the fabric of their lives. One afternoon, they took the kids for a walk in a nearby park. Elias was pushing Leo on a swing, and Lily was determinedly climbing the jungle gym. Clara sat on a bench, watching them. The sunlight streamed through the leaves, dappling the grass. "I used to dream about a day like this," she said softly when Elias sat down beside her. "Just a normal, boring, beautiful day." He smiled. "There's nothing boring about it." He looked at her, at the way the light caught in her hair, at the newfound peace in her eyes. "I was thinking," he began, a little hesitantly, "that my company has a West Coast office. It's growing. It needs executive oversight." Her heart gave a small leap. "Are you thinking of moving to Pasadena?" "I'm thinking," he said, meeting her gaze, "that my penthouse in Chicago is very quiet and very empty, and that I'd rather be here, fixing a leaky faucet, than anywhere else in the world." A slow, brilliant smile spread across her face. "Are you asking me if you can move in, Mr. Vance?" He chuckled. "I think I am, Ms. Walker. I'm hoping you have a spare room." "I think," she said, her voice soft, "we can make some space." A few weeks later, Sarah received an email from a small, independent publisher who had read a piece she'd written for a local community newsletter about her experiences. "We were incredibly moved by your story," the email read. "We believe it's a story that needs to be told. Have you ever considered writing a book?" Clara stared at the email, her heart pounding. She looked over at her writing desk, at the stacks of notebooks filled with her cramped, passionate handwriting. She had already started. "Elias!" she called out, her voice filled with a joy so pure it felt like a song. He came into the room, and she showed him the email. He wrapped his arms around her, lifting her off the ground in a proud, spinning hug. "Looks like you're officially a force of nature." "I prefer a force of nurture," she laughed against his shoulder. He set her down, his hands lingering on her waist. "Either way," he said softly, "remind me to never underestimate you again." Later, she sat down at her desk and reread the last line she had written in her manuscript. "I didn't just escape. I rebuilt." She picked up her pen and added one more sentence, "And now I help others find the blueprints to do the same." She closed the notebook, a sense of profound, quiet completion washing over her. The house in Pasadena was filled with light. A book contract sat on the table. A man she loved was making dinner in the kitchen. Her children were safe and laughing in the yard. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better, it was real, and it was hers. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, unassuming in a stack of mail. But this one had a return address from a town in Louisiana and a handwriting Clara hadn't seen in nearly 15 years. Her mother's. She didn't open it immediately. She placed it on the kitchen counter, a small paper ghost amidst the joyful chaos of her new life. After the kids were asleep, she sat on the porch, Elias beside her, and finally broke the seal. "Dear Clara," it began. "I don't know if you'll read this. I don't blame you if you throw it away. I failed you. As a mother, as a person, I let my own pain make me cruel. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't regret it. I heard from a cousin you were doing well, that you had children, that you were safe. It's all I ever wanted for you, even if I was too broken to help you find it. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and that I'm proud of the woman you became in spite of me. Love, Mama." Clara folded the letter, tears blurring her vision. Elias took her hand. "You don't have to forgive her," he said gently. "I know," she whispered, "but I think I already have." A few days later, she stood before her first official writing workshop. It was held at a local women's shelter. The room was small, the chairs mismatched, but it was filled with women who had stories in their eyes. "My name is Clara," she began, her voice steady and clear. "And I'm here to tell you that your story is not over. It's just waiting for you to pick up the pen." She looked around the room, at the faces filled with fear and hope, and saw herself. And she knew, with every fiber of her being, that this was why she had survived. That night, Lily was waiting for her with a surprise. She had taken a shoebox and decorated it, and inside were dozens of small, folded pieces of paper. "It's your letter box," Lily explained proudly. "Just like yours, Mama, for all your big, brave feelings." Sarah opened one. On it, in Lily's careful printing, it said, "I promise to pay when I grow up." Sarah smiled through her tears. "You already have, sweetheart," she whispered. "You've already paid in full." Outside, the California stars glittered in the clear night sky. Quiet witnesses to a life that had come full circle, not back to where it started, but to a new, brighter beginning, forged in fire and built on the unshakable foundation of love. 1 year after the arrest that changed everything, the Pasadena house buzzed with a joyful, chaotic energy. It was Lily's 10th birthday, and the backyard was filled with the sounds of children's laughter, upbeat music, and the sizzle of burgers on the grill. Elias, now officially a permanent resident, was at the barbecue, flipping burgers with a practiced ease that belied his history as a Wall Street titan. Clara moved through the party, a picture of grace and quiet confidence. She greeted parents from Lily's school, chatted with neighbors, and kept a watchful eye on Leo, who was determined to eat more cake than his small body could handle. Her memoir, Invisible, a story of survival and reclaiming the light, had been published 2 months ago to critical acclaim. It wasn't a bestseller, but it had found its way into the hands of people who needed it most: social workers, therapists, and women in shelters who saw their own struggles reflected in her powerful prose. Her writing workshops at the community center were now a pillar of their support program, with a waiting list of women eager to find their own voice. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a guide. In the middle of the party, Mike Chen arrived with his wife. He gave Clara a warm hug. "Look at this," he said, gesturing around the yard. "It's a different world from that day under the overpass." "We built it," Clara said, a simple statement of profound truth. "By the way," Mike added, lowering his voice slightly, "got an update on Marco. He's taking college courses in prison. Sent a letter to the warden, said your book was the first thing that ever made him understand the damage he caused. Doesn't excuse it, but it's something." Clara nodded, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. His healing wasn't her responsibility, but she was glad for it nonetheless. Later, as the sun began to set, Elias gathered everyone for the cake. As Lily stood before the lit candles, surrounded by her friends, she didn't wish for a new bike or a video game. When they asked what she wished for, she said, "I wished that everyone gets to feel this happy." After the party wound down and the last guest had departed, the 4 of them sat on the back porch, tired but happy. Elias had his arm around Clara, and Lily and Leo were curled up together on the outdoor sofa, half asleep. "It was a good day," Clara said softly. "It was a perfect day," Elias agreed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled napkin. He unfolded it carefully. It was Lily's first drawing, the faint pencil sketch of a tall man, a little girl, and a baby, with the word home scribbled above them. "I've kept this with me every day since you gave it to me," he said to Lily. She smiled sleepily. "I can draw a better one now." "No," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This one is perfect." He looked at Clara, at the 2 children who had become his own, at the small, beautiful life they had all built together from the ashes. "This," he said, "is home." And it was. It wasn't a penthouse or a mansion. It was something far more valuable. It was a promise kept. It was a family chosen. It was a testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest treasures are not the ones we acquire, but the ones we are brave enough to build, one small, hopeful day at a time. The story of Clara reminds us that hope is not a passive wish, but an active choice. It's the decision to plant a garden in barren soil, to write a new chapter when the old one is filled with pain, and to believe in the possibility of a sunrise even after the longest, darkest night. Her journey teaches us that the greatest strength is not in never falling, but in the courage to rise again and again, and in doing so, showing others the way.